I'm going to ask the people who are online if someone can confirm that they can hear the sound from the room.
Yes, I confirm I can hear you, Aphrodite. Hi.
Perfect. Thanks a lot, Slobodan. Okay. Right. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this first part of a two-series event that we will organize this workshop for our officials and experts that are interested in learning more about the policy methodologies. It's great to be finally sitting in the same room with so many experts and interested parties in learning more about what we have been working on all these years and what we have been developing. My name is Aphrodite Mathiodaki. I'm a senior officer at CDP Europe, and I will be moderating the session today. For those who are not familiar with CDP, we are the world's independent environmental disclosure platform. We had last year over almost 20,000 organizations disclosing, among them more than 1,100 cities, which makes us being the largest right now, holding the largest environmental database globally. So I would like to give a little bit of details, practical details about the session today. This is a 90-minute session. Divided in 4 parts. We have a small change in the sequence. You have all received the agenda. So we will have Alfred going third and then Sandra finishing up. Our session, we will have a 15-minute break after the third session. And of course, we'll have time in the end for questions from the audience. So for those of you joining online, please feel free to put your questions in the chat and we'll make sure to answer them. Our experts will answer them in the end. So, without further delay, I'd like to pass the floor to our first panelist, Dr. Stanislava Boskovic, an architect, urban designer, and partner of the Imperial College in London. Stanislava is devoted to research-led systemic design activities. Her endeavor mainly focuses on exploring the links between science and architecture for strengthening optimal design solutions to combat climate change in complex urban systems. Stanislava is actively engaged in supervising environmental engineering, Master of Science and PhD thesis at Imperial College, and is regularly invited as a guest lecturer to a number of prestigious universities across Europe. So, Stanislava, would you like to come up, take the floor, and let us know what is the approach, the euPOLIS approach to the use and design of public spaces, and why is this relevant in urban planning processes today?
Thank you very much, Aphrodite, for the introduction. Thank you very much for attention and all joining online. My presentation will be introductory, just to give you an overview about our project, about our partners and activities, and prepare you for other more detailed presentations that will come just after mine. So, euPOLIS project introduced an integrated urban planning methodology. And when we say integrated, we focus on a multidisciplinary approach to urban planning and to the public spaces that we are dealing with in the project in 4 European cities with the implementation. And we will see then also that we have follower cities that are actively involved in the process that the project proposes. So the importance of enhancement of public health and well-being in our city is definitely very important topic today. And what is characteristic for our project is this connection of this enhancement of public health and well-being through the innovative introduction of innovative nature-based solution. And when we think about NBS's nature-based solutions in our project, we think about the solutions that are not made only of one intervention, but could be combined and seen as a specific solution for a context that we are dealing with. So the connection of nature-based solution and health, as we said, is a very important one, and the research about the effects and benefits of the nature-based solution on citizens' health and health generally is very important. And also the research was, and we have very important papers on that already, since one of the most, let's say, changing the mindset of the importance and like proving the importance of MBSs for the health was the famous paper from '84 of Ulrich that demonstrated that recovery in hospitals, the velocity of recovery is directly connected with the view and with the presence of nature-based solution. Although it wasn't approved for all kind of surgeries or all kind of diseases that could be cured, it was very clearly a sign that nature-based solutions and the health benefits are connecting. And our project is about it, but it is also about very important social aspects of public spaces in the city, and how these social nexuses that are created in public spaces that we are dealing with are impacting the public health and well-being. We very well know, even this week, 2 days ago, the news just broke in all channels about the loneliness epidemic, almost called United States, and how difficult it is to deal in many big cities with this state. And when we think about the cities and the interventions, we think about the direct quantifying impact, but also how can we enhance the community elements and also the socialization in these places we work. To do so, we have many partners, and main partners or protagonists of our project are our cities. And we will have a quick, very quick tour on it in following slides. So they are Belgrade, Gladsaxe, Łódź, and Piraeus, and we also have follower cities, as I mentioned, that are following the process of the work in the project, and those are Palermo, Limassol, Trebinje, Bogota, and Fengxi New City in China. But cities are incredibly important partners, but we also have academic partners, and Imperial College is one of them, but we have also other prestigious universities that are supporting our work from the research and academic point of view. We have technical partners, we have technology providers, partners in a way to cover all aspects all aspects of the project. So the demo sites we are dealing with in very different conditions are actually different. They are different in size, they are different in traditions. I will just very quickly, because of time limits, go through. So we saw Łódź, this is Gladsaxe that is hosting our event today, Piraeus, and city of Belgrade, and they are very different from so many aspects. As I mentioned, the size of future of the public spaces we are dealing with, but also of the interventions is very, very different. But study of the context of the demo site is incredibly important to then proceed with any following step in the project. And the studying of the context started at the very beginning of the project with the mapping of the main concerns of citizens, of the main problems already existing in the public space we are dealing with. And it is just from the knowledge we received with the very different methods we'll be using from the beginning. And when our project started, mostly we had to rely on an online communication and on surveys via videos, not very often possible to do for all experts like we are doing now in Gladsaxe in person. So all different sources allowed us to create categories and the groups of working in different categories related to the potential effects of nature-based solutions on urban development, environment, social aspects, as we said, economic and business elements. And it gave us a possibility to identify the requirements for each of these demo sites, also to prioritize them through their direct or indirect impact on public health and well-being, have a clear idea about the local conditions and gaps that are identified in each demo site, also thanks to the tools like goal-driven planning matrix to identify the gaps and then to proceed with the design phase. And so this systematic work led us to have a vision of what can we do actually in public spaces. There are many requirements that are very specific for each public space because of these differences. And it's true that many of our cities have the same problems, but the solutions very often are different for a specific case. But there are also some common project requirements that we saw from the very beginning in each of the places that we are dealing with. And the site screening and the connection with the nature-based solution selection will be in more detail explained in one of the following presentations of colleague Sandra Bacchi, and you will have an opportunity to know more about the developed tool. And all the process also is support, but a continuous testing and simulating of some possible effects. It could be done with the different softwares, and from the very beginning, even when the selection of the MBSs was not defined as at this point of the project, we already tried to see what possible scenarios could create the better positive benefits for the impacts, and definitely benefits for our sites. And those on the screen are some examples. More about how we will monitor the interventions and what kind of environmental monitoring, public health and well-being monitoring, or social will be said in other next presentation by colleague Anya Rangelovic. And just closing my part of introduction, I wanted to say that the dialogue and the communication with citizens and with all stakeholders, both expert and end users of the public spaces we are dealing, it's a mainstream of our activity. This is one of the workshops performed in Belgrade last year, about a year ago, that we truly believe that knowledge we can gain from the users of our spaces is incredibly important for a whole design process, and it is on that dialogue that both parts can learn about possible effects from our side of the interventions, and we about the concerns and the specific potential of the spaces we are dealing with through the dialogue with the citizens and other users of our public spaces. And just to say that we are constantly evaluating our own approach. This is something that we did it this morning, but also have been doing for some time now, and we'll keep doing it up to the end of the project. And this evaluation is multi-criteria and covers different aspects in a way to, in the process, see and notice if there is anything where we can improve, but also to share with our partners and with other cities that are in the same process what difficulties can be encountered and what are the possible ways to better solve those issues. And very final, really, is the one that we are also working in thinking how the experience we are all together building can be scaled up, maybe in some other public spaces in the cities we are already working in, but also in other cities in the countries we are dealing, but also outside of it. So with this, I would like to thank you for your attention. And of course, I will be available after with other colleagues to answer any of your questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Stanislava. I mean, we have here representatives already from a few municipalities and a few more online. I think that we all share is this understanding and this realization during COVID, during all this time, of how important nature is and nature elements around us in cities. This doesn't mean necessarily that one size fits all or all NBS solutions are the most optimal for each city. And this is also what this project is trying to develop, to understand in the local context, each urban and peri-urban environment is different, it's particular. So, and this is what the project is also trying to develop methodology, develop tools for our city officials to choose the best and the most optimal nature-based solution for their areas. I'm very happy to have here with us Dr. Anja Rangelovic, Assistant Professor at the Faculty of Civil Engineering at the University of Belgrade. Anja's area of research includes applied fluid mechanics and water quality in urban stormwater systems, sampling, analysis, and modeling with relevant water quality targets, pathogens and micropollutants using conceptual and physical modeling of natural and man-made stormwater treatment systems in the uncertainty framework. In euPOLIS, Anja leads the development of a multidimensional indicator framework that will eventually allow assessing the extent of the public health and well-being enhancements provided by NBSs in a limited time frame and on a local scale with the potential for upscaling. Welcome, Anja. Would you like to tell us a little more about the indicator framework that you and your team in Belgrade and through euPOLIS are developing?
Yes, thank you, Aphrodite. Very happy to be here, so I'll do my best. Do help me if you get stuck somewhere on the way. So a few words about the euPOLIS indicator framework. You have heard many times about this. First, Stanislava gave quite a good introduction about the euPOLIS. I just wanted to take maybe a few more messages. So as we know, we all live in the cities, and more people will be living in the cities, and the cities are actually facing many challenges, especially in providing environments that can support good health and well-being. Overcrowded places, high density of living, high pollution, bad access to good food, many increased risks for respiratory diseases, allergies, less physical activity because there are not enough public spaces accessible to all. So everything leads actually to bad health in the cities. The conventional urban approaches do not take this into account. They are mostly based on profit criteria. The local communities are not recognized, their needs are not heard. So we end up with investments which are costly, and since they are not made with the community, they are not embraced by the community and therefore are not sustainable. Now, what our project does is to provide a systematic public health and well-being planning criteria, which actually helps us into selecting, working with the public into selecting the nature-based systems which will tackle all the challenges of living in urban environments, then also to form a next generation of citizens who are environmentally aware and are capable of, I mean, we can communicate with them through ICT tools, but also we should not forget that also the people who are not digitally literate, so to have also their opinions. To have different scales of integrated nature-based systems, and to have the post-implementation evaluation model to see what is the effectiveness of these nature-based systems in these cities. So as Anna and her team, which have collaborated quite a lot with us in this whole indicator framework, I mean, most of the partners have actually contributed, Kinga as well. People have a right to a healthy city. It's what your paper is about. So, and this means that we have to hear what people need in this place and make the place according to their needs, and not make the people, you know, fit into this urban environment. So this is our major point. I will present now the indicator framework of euPOLIS, and also I will show how it relates to the planning system, because after all, this is what we are doing here. So from different categories of one step back, we try to assess the public health and well-being. Now, what we want to do to find with these impacts, we can either find the direct impacts on the actual health or the indirect impacts, which are related to environmental factors related to public health. I don't know, climate stuff, pollution, social aspects or sociocultural aspects, which are related to public health and well-being, economic aspects or urban aspects. So these are different categories of things that we want to assess our nature-based systems, how they perform. So we call it categories. From them, we have two distinct sets of indicators. One are the contextual ones, and other ones are the evaluation. The contextual ones are used in the planning phase. And the planning phase, meaning it is when we don't have set up a monitoring system. So we use everything of the data that is readily available, that databases, different projects. So it comes from many different scales in the city and many different places. And we try to assess what are the needs and the requirements on a site based on these contextual indicators. And then together with what Stanislava was mentioning, with other type of information, provide an initial baseline assessment, and to find, as I said, the requirements of the site. From the requirements of the site, we use the planning system of euPOLIS, which is the goal-driven planning metrics, to find what are the goals, how to address the needs on the site, put the specific targets, and then select the interventions which can perform well with this to fill the goals. And we use the second type of indicators, which are the evaluation indicators, to assess how well these nature-based systems have performed. Now, the evaluation indicators are therefore quite local. They measure the site before the implementation, and then after, at least before and at least after the implementation. So from the difference in the two time frames, we can see what is the actual impact of the nature-based system in a solution in different categories, in different aspects. People are the integral part of this, and yes, for the evaluation indicators, as I said, you need a monitoring system, either the sensors for the environment, either the smart wearables for some of the health-related data. It can be remote sense data. It can be the surveys which are filled out either digitally or physically. But anyhow, people somehow become a central part of this monitoring. But it's not just that we get the data from the people. People are part of the whole process of the planning. From the participative process that we have with the people results in having not just the technical aspects, benefits of the nature-based solutions, but by including the people, by providing them with enough information through different communication tools, or I don't know, to provide them the place, you know, to express their needs and stuff through the different workshops, provide them the opportunity to decide. They actually, we actually start a process. How do you say? We inspire the social. We make it happen. The social aspect of the nature-based system. We make them connected to the nature-based system. They are engaged in the community. It increases their trust in the decision making, and these are all the good benefits of having nature-based system. You have a more tight community around this public site. As I said, the main categories, I mean, the main aspects in which we assess nature-based systems are either the direct, public health and well-being, or the indirect, whereas the social or the economical, the urban, and the environmental. And each of them can be assessed using different types of tools. For example, I don't know if you can see here, but it's what I already mentioned: sensors, environmental, remote sensing, questionnaires, smart wearables, modeling. We have to be aware that even though we use, for example, not so expensive sensors when we do the environment, still a lot of resources go into placing this integrated systems. So we actually developed some modeling tools that can be combined with the monitoring, so to kind of be conscious with spending of the resources to fill up the gaps of the missing data. The smart wearables from the project, which are quite interesting, do two different things. So one is actually a commercially available smartwatch, which is compatible with the euPOLIS platform developed by BioAssist. It can be, I don't know, a Huawei, a Fitbit, whichever type of a smartwatch, which actually collects the data on physiological parameters: heart rate, body temperature, I don't know, sleep patterns, physical activity, and so on. And all this type of data actually feed into the evaluation indicators, which I will later talk a bit about. The other one is the proprietary MyFeel wearable, which actually can provide as an output the emotional response of a user to certain events, including the interaction with the nature-based systems. And we actually have no idea what will be the results of using of this type of wearables. So we are quite excited to see these results together with the data coming from more conventional sensors for monitoring the environment, for example. The first group of indicators used in the planning phase, the contextual indicators, I will not talk too much because I think Sandra, my colleague Sandra, will give quite a detailed explanation of how it is used in the planning and on the selection of nature-based systems. So I will focus maybe a bit on the evaluation indicators. We still don't have it in details because we are still, as you know, in the project implementing the monitoring system and doing everything to collect the data. So then we will see what will be the outputs. So for our project partners who are maybe not aware, in the deliverable 4.1, we actually made the list of the first list of proposed evaluation indicators. There is like 82 of them, which fall into the 5 already mentioned categories. And for each of them, we actually found like the selection criteria was whether they are related to the public health and well-being, whether they are related to the nature-based systems that we will be implementing, what is the method, how they are monitored, calculated, and so on. Here are their characteristics. Maybe interesting is to mention that we have, as experts, developed this type of indicators, but we are also open when we start monitoring the implemented solutions, also to develop some indicators together with the stakeholders on site, very local indicators, very tailor-made, and those will probably be from the category of the social indicators. Now, from this huge list of 80-something indicators, how to select which are the appropriate ones? First, we have to evaluate what are the main concerns on the site, and this we do with the contextual indicators. Once we find what is the problem on the site, then we can proceed with finding what is the appropriate nature-based solution that can tackle this problem. And when we have these two, we say, okay, how do we measure this before and after? And for that, there are some details how we select. But the main thing is that we have, and I have here just made like a snapshot of the big table, which actually gives us a connection between the different main concerns under the different categories with the whole list of evaluation indicators. And the list it goes down, just a snapshot. So for example, you see, I don't know, extreme heat. If extreme heat is a concern on a site, a mandatory indicator is to do something about the air temperature reduction or the air cooling. So it means you have to place the sensor for, this one is like really logical. You have to put the sensor for measuring the temperature, before and after. But as you go down, it gets a bit more complex, especially when you want to have the multidisciplinary aspect of a certain concern. And here is what we hope. This is one of the outputs that we would like to have at some point, which are the spider diagrams in the different categories for either one particular nature-based solution or a group of nature-based solution for a site under, I don't know, different social concerns. The main social concerns we have the before and the after. And we hope to go from a small one, so everything was a 0 to 100% one. It's normalized, so it's, let's call it in a percentage values. Sure. One minute. Yeah. What happens beyond the indicators? I mean, that is not the whole impact assessment that we have. So the detailed measurements are to find these values, to quantify the evaluation indicators and to provide the assessment. But then we can upgrade them to a more comprehensive synthetic measurement, and this is very important for a public health and well-being project, which is to find what is for example, the livability of the area. And here comes the livability model, euPOLIS livability model, and then upgrade it more to find what is the social sustainability of the whole solution. How long will it be embraced by the public? The euPOLIS livability model, out of all the definitions of livability, is actually based on the 7 categories of the new European Bauhaus initiative. So it has the sense of safety, multifunctionality of the place, contact with nature, comfort of use, walkability, friendliness, and sense of place. And all this can actually be determined from the evaluation indicators that we already measure. So this is like a bigger measurement than just the small ones. And the social sustainability, as I said, ensures the long-term livability of our solutions as well. So here are some of the characteristics of the community or the process that we have to have in the here. So to have the diversity of skill and actors that are involved, the stakeholders, they have to be open to the experience and to cooperate, to have a common meaning and the compatibility with the nature-based solution values. we have a capacity for self-organization, and all this gets promoted if we have a participatory process and when we join the people. People by themselves, person by themselves, they don't give you this is a product of multiple people. Okay, so this is what I have prepared for today. Thank you. So I have skipped something, or if you have more questions, I'll be more than happy to answer after when we have the discussion session.
Thank you very much, Anya. Very interesting, and I can imagine that for cities interested in implementing or interested in developing and nature-based solutions-based use of their public space, this is a very powerful tool to have. Of course, I also understand what is very interesting to hear is probably how we can go from selecting those, doing this exercise, to actually implementing. And being today in Gladsaxe, being hosted here by our wonderful host, it would be very interesting to hear how was the experience of the municipality so far in the implementation, the selection in all these procedure that is not always easy, and what are the challenges that the municipality has faced. So our next panelist is Mr. Alfred Figueras. Alfred graduated as an environmental biologist from the Autonomous University of Barcelona and has a Master of Science in Nature Management from the University of Copenhagen. A specialist in urban biodiversity, is currently working for AMFI, a Danish environmental consultancy with more than 50 years of experience in ecosystem restoration, biodiversity assessments, and in developing nature-based solutions. euPOLIS, among other Horizon 2020 funded projects, Alfred is investigating the relationship between urban nature, biodiversity protection, and human health and well-being, and is closely collaborating with the Gladsaxe municipality in implementing the results of the euPOLIS project. Alfred, the floor is yours.
Okay. Thank you. I will start with my presentation just shortly, acknowledging my team and the one that we're working with euPOLIS in AMFI. It's me, also with Frida, as you know, a landscape architect, and our director Lars, that we work together in AMFI. But I just want also to present what do we do in AMFI. So we are a consultancy that we are specialized in monitoring fauna and flora. We are involved in different kinds of projects, but for you to have a better idea, we are involved in environmental impact assessments. We also help designing and developing compensation and mitigation measures. We are involved in building different fauna passages, and also in restoration, habitat creation. And finally, more into the topic, we also have some nature-based solutions ready to use to install on different contexts. And of course, we don't work alone, because this presentation is specifically about how do we implement nature-based solutions, focusing on the case of Gladsaxe demo site. So this is the team that we work together as. There's the architect Morten with his company, and then Gladsaxe municipality also collaborating with us. So that's the Danish team. So in the presentation of today, I'll be just introducing a bit which are the different steps of the implementation process for MBSs. Then how we actually moved from the whole MBSs, how we selected them, and which were the ones that we implemented finally in the context of euPOLIS. I will shortly present the case of the demo site, Pillar Parisen 6, which problematics and which challenges and opportunities we have over there. Finally, also we'll go through some of the most important MBSs interventions selected for the site. And finally, shortly introducing some of the MBS products that we are planning to develop and to implement during this project. So to start with, more like theoretical introduction and point of view, there is this figure adapted from Raymond et al. 2017 that shows basically on this scheme the different phases of implementing MBSs in urban contexts. As we said, and also as we follow in euPOLIS, we start with identifying problems and opportunities on each of the cities. That we did it with the contextual indicators and collecting data on the sites. And then we went through a process of selecting and assessing which MBS options, because there's many options, but which ones are the most appropriate for each demo site, and which ones will tackle which problems with the site to address. This is done through the selection tool that Sandra will later on present. Then there's some like really some processes like the co-designing and the implementation of the actual intervention selected. And throughout, like this is another step here on the screen, but throughout the whole process, we frequently engage with relevant stakeholders and with the end users, both to communicate the co-benefits, but also to incorporate their needs, their wishes, and their opinions on the whole process. So when it comes to nature-based solutions, there's like different phases and different steps that we know, but euPOLIS focus a lot on demonstrating initiatives, like testing new solutions, and also providing innovative nature-based solutions as well. So that's the main objectives. So when it comes to to start the implementation process, first of all, it's very important to formalize a collaboration and identify which are the most relevant stakeholders of the project, and also to jointly formulate which problems and challenges do we want to tackle with these MBSs. And then there's the second step that we are working now more in the project is analyzing the different options, identifying also key policies and key actors that may facilitate this implementation, or they may hinder, or they might pose some barriers to it. And also, of course, there's an exploration of financial options. We're working here with research and with EU fundings, but also there's other ways to get financial support to implement nature-based solutions in cities. So I'm just going to here present briefly the starting point of the MBS implementation in Alsace. We identified the main driver, and it was a political demand, because in Alsace, as all the municipalities in Denmark, they want to update the sewage system in the municipality, and where wastewater and rainwater wants to be separated and run in separate systems. And this is because sewers are under pressure because of climate change. There has been seen an increase of heavy stormwater events that pose those systems in risk. And of course, this is done to avoid potential flooding and to reduce pollution when all the water is collected into the receiving water bodies that is harmful to ecosystems. So there was, first of all, developed a project that's called Dam Project, where there was a focus on evaporation, because relying on infiltration in the demo site is not the main option that we can count on for different reasons. So there's the Dam Project, and building on top of this project, there was the opportunity of receiving different kinds of fundings for both the housing and the area, but also to do research about and test different types of MBSs when it comes to this like jointly objective of evaporating rainwater. That's done through euPOLIS and all the research activities under it. So how did we actually select and went through the whole project in England, Saxon? So we started with the requirements, analyzing the project requirements, the demo site requirements, but also the citizen needs in that specific area. We collected from the beginning a lot of data when it comes to workshops and questionnaires. We did with relevant stakeholders, with the residents living there, in order to get as much data as possible and to have a clear idea of which were the main challenges. And finally, we selected which MBSs were the most appropriate through different tools like goal-driven planning matrix and so on, with the main objective of increasing public health and well-being on the site. As I said, a really, really important step throughout the whole process is to involve and consult with the end users, the residents who will use and who will actually make the MBSs the place to spend time outdoors and so on. So we use different approaches like introduction workshops, questionnaires. For some time, we worked on the site with a mobile truck office where people could get in and show us their needs and ask questions, and also different events such as gardening events, common dinners, in order to at the end increase stewardship, so they could actually feel ownership of the space, sense of belonging. So we would make sure that the actual MBSs that will be implemented will be used and will be received well by the community. These are some pictures of some of the events that we organized on the demo site with the residents. And I will briefly present the demo site, the ones that are here present. Yesterday we visited the demo site, and you know quite a lot about it actually. But for the ones that are on the online event, I will just give like a very brief description. So as you can see, the orange part is Copenhagen. So Gladsaxe is north from Copenhagen, and the demo site is just on the border between the two municipalities inside Gladsaxe. And it's situated in the district of Modhøj. And here are some numbers about this specific demo site. So it's quite special because it's a housing estate with 199 residents living in different households, 117 households. We know that there's like a high percentage, like 30%, that have a foreign background, and 42% of them have stated to be unemployed. We also know that the physical and mental health is a challenge, and it has been reported through different questionnaires and surveys to be lower than the rest of the district. Also, there's a high number of people feeling insecure when walking, not just outside, but in the surroundings of the neighborhood. And 6 out of 10, for instance, experience involuntary loneliness. So there's some social and some economic problems related to the demo site, plus some other ones, more like environmental, such the common green areas being very plain, very homogeneous, holding low biodiversity value, that there's a limited use of this outdoor space. We've been observing that people really don't make use of the areas they have. And also there's been some problems leading to flooding because large surfaces in the demo site are covered by impermeable materials. And as, of course, all the social and health challenges that I mentioned before. But we believe that through this project, there's a high potential to enhance all these challenges through outdoor life brought by the MBSs implemented. So here there's some of the MBSs that we are going to implement in Gladsaxe. This is an overview of the demo site, and these large squares are the buildings, but I will go just through some of them. For instance, we're going to plant new trees in specific structures in mounds that will have like both conifer and deciduous trees planted in elevated beds with a specific structure underneath that will ensure both a good air circulation, but also will be pumped with water underneath. So it will enhance the natural evapotranspiration of the trees by providing it with water at all times without the risk of rooting. So this will be installed in different places of the demo site. Then on the southern part of this block, there will come a specific type of MDS that we call it meadow with low vegetation. It's basically a low-laying basin with a nutrient-poor medium covered by herbaceous plants and perennials. And it may be also temporarily flooded, so it will collect water from the roofs besides it. And also it will be provided with different paths and stepping stones to make it both interactive for people to experience wildlife and to be more in contact with nature on their daily life. Also, this soil and root zone that we will establish, it's designed to filtrate water, enhancing its quality because it's one of the main places that will receive water at the beginning, and it will continue to flow by gravity towards the rest of the MBSs. Another MBS that we plan to establish is both a lake and a protected by a water cleanup pond. The lake will provide both water storage for the whole system that is needed, but also habitat for local species. The lake also will be connected to other underground water storage facilities. And there's a specific climate pond that will be put on the north, will be a sheltered and a protected area that will be more undisturbed, that will provide habitat for freshwater species. Of course, the whole pondscape will provide evaporation, recreation, and health benefits that at the moment there's not an intervention providing all of this on the demo site. Then also we will provide a highly recreational intervention. It's like a ball field with a green hilly landscape around. It will be a flat terrain covered by grass, but we know that underneath there will be like a porous material that with high soil humidity will force evaporation from the grass surface. There will be an additional underground reservoir, and all this ball field will be surrounded by a hilly landscape. So in case of a very torrential, heavy rain event, the ball field will be able to be filled to protect the nearby buildings from flooding. So it will also act as a catchment of rainwater. We also plan to install some facade greening of different types. That's an example. For instance, a facade green wall that will provide water storage behind the actual plants. Of course, vertical transpiration during the day. It will attract different types of insects and birds as a nesting and foraging site. And another type of facade greening or vertical greening would be some kitchen gardens installed here near between the two buildings that will create protected spaces to relax, and the residents will be able to cultivate their own flowers, their own like herbs, and at the same time it will provide evaporation to the whole system. And to finish, on the northern part, we will also try to install this sensors garden. In this case, not as we know as green walls. It will be like more brown walls that are done with different wood and different porous materials inside, which are able to soak with water and then evaporate water with solar and wind exposure. It's a kind of sound absorbing material, so it will secure the privacy of the surrounding apartments. And this kind of garden will create some meditative spaces with the sound of running water and cooling down during like hot summer days, where people will be able to relax and have their bit more privacy in comparison to the rest of the site. Here we have just like very briefly explain how the hydrological system will work, but water will be collected in different parts of the roofs, and it will be directed through gravity through the meadow, and it will go down through different roofs until the lake that all the water will be stored. And from the lake, there will be some pump system that will pump the water again through the different solutions. So this will enable a circulation of water through the system. Of course, with an emergency outlet at the end of the demo site. These are some of the results that we got from the different MBS that I just explained, that later on Sandra will comment more in depth, but just to show it briefly. But I don't have time, so I'm just going to change and present some of the ready-to-use interventions that we work in our company. And actually, this one, the biowater cleanup pond, is the one that we plan to install close to the lake in the demo site. So in this case, we call it this like modern village pond that can be adapted to highly urbanized spaces like the one we can see here in a like very urbanized courtyard, with three main functions: that's climate adaptation, biodiversity, and social benefits. It has like a climate adaptation functionality because it collects water from the surrounding roofs, and the water is able to be collected in the pond and either infiltrated or retained temporarily. So it kind of discharges quite a lot of pressure from the conventional sewer systems. And by extreme water events, there's also an emergency overflow just in case. It also provides biodiversity benefits in like really impervious places otherwise. We use native swamp and aquatic plants in different types of zones. There's one zone that there's always water to provide access to these aquatic organisms throughout the whole year. And we also provide monitoring, different like using different types of species and groups like macroinvertebrates to monitor which is the colonization capacity and the water quality throughout the year. And of course, for sure, there's some social benefits that converts these spaces that otherwise are not that used to a meeting point, a gathering point, and it provides direct contact with water and with nature that it's very important. It's not that easy to provide in the city. And we expect some innovations when it comes to the euPOLIS project. I want to test, first of all, which is the capacity, like the evapotranspiration capacity of this specific pond, to test the reduction of environmental temperature around the pond during summer, and assess which is the public perception of having an aquatic, like a water element on their courtyard, for instance, and which impact has on the well-being with being in contact daily with biodiversity and with nature. And another of the MBSs that potentially will be implemented in other demo sites is the green bus stop. That is like a multifunctional urban furniture that it resembles a lot to a conventional one, but it has different uses and different benefits because it's a shelter as all other green bus stops, but also improves the temperature and reduces urban heat island effect. As seen in the picture, it's able to collect water to store it in different compartments down underground, and also it provides like stepping stone habitat and avoids some fauna-related accidents because the glass structures are covered with like climbing plants and vegetation. So this is all on my side.
Alfred, can we ask some questions?
I don't know if now
Just a
or
quick question.
yes.
About the project, maybe also Morten can. Answer.
Yeah,
That sensory art you were mentioning, the walls,
yes.
how tall are they?
I'll let Morten answer the technical question.
We have a height that just underneath, we don't see the height. So when you live quite close to them, you look up, you look above them. And then we have a cover that will be green as well, that connects to the wall. So you basically, when you're inside the apartment, you will look at a green and you, yeah.
So the wall is basically right next to the facade of the building, like you cannot walk behind or something like that.
There are 5 meters between,
5 meters.
5 meters between the facade.
Why did you decide to orient the sensory garden that way? I mean, why not decide to make this barrier towards the parking places rather than the buildings? I mean, I'm asking a little bit from the gender and security issues. We heard yesterday on site that there is an issue of the personal feeling of safety. And buildings and windows in this sense are looked at eyes on the street. So if the space that is used by the residents or whoever is closer to the building, they might get an increased sense of safety because actually their neighbors can see them, rather than if they are somehow, there's a barrier between them and they are oriented towards cars and parking, which is not, which is not the space where we get a lot of. I'm just
This has been a discussion because discussing security with the residents, they basically don't want to build anything because you can hide behind anything.
We totally understand.
So when we introduced that we wanted as well, we are evaporating water from the walls. We have a lot of different elements that evaporate water, and to create evaporation, we need to go, to make to get surface in height. So that has been a discussion, how to turn these elements so they don't block the visual, but still it has as well been a discussion. Is it if we want to be able to see everything to be sure nobody's hiding, then you just have a space without anything. And is that the result you want, to be safe, or do you want to somehow build up things so you create a nice space to be in?
I mean, you end up with barriers. I mean, trees can also be barriers, and people do want them. I'm just more talking about this placement, I mean, I usually go for the option to have buildings and then the space that is being used, and then some kind of barrier. Is it your wall? Is it a corridor of trees or whatever? And then traffic. Because I feel, although in Serbia, you will usually see a different placement, more towards what you are showing us now. But I feel that in practice, I mean, I'm just asking you to, think about it. It might be better to have the space that is the space where you're gathering, which is the sensory garden, right? Maybe, I mean, it can be, I understand that it could also provide conflicts. If, people are gathering right underneath somebody's window, that could also create an issue. But just to think about, how to place the walls, because they are going to be quite a visual.
Basically,
Morten, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Sorry. But it's an interesting discussion.
Of course. Sorry, excuse me. We're gonna pick it up after, in the end, we'll have this room and time for discussion. Sorry to be that person, the role of the moderator. So yeah, it's great. Thanks a lot, Alfred. It's exactly the kind of discussion we want to have, and it was great also listening yesterday, the citizens there in one of the demo sites, talking to the people, because in the end of the day, this is what we're all working on. We need to listen to people's needs, and respond to those. and it feels like now people need a coffee. So let's have a short break for coffee. And we'll be back in 15 minutes for a last live with another exciting policy tool. So see you all back at 2. Please, those in the room that have not peeked on their name in the list, please do so. We have a list circulated in the room. And it will be available, of course, also after the training, because we will have a follow-up survey. I'll share more details about that later. See you all in 15 minutes. Okay. Okay, great. Hope everyone is back at the necessary energy boost for this last part. For which I would like to introduce Ms. Sandra Baki, a specialist in hydrology and environmental management with over 20 years of experience in research and consultation.
We lost sound. You are muted. We cannot hear you.
Yeah. 14 plus 17 plus.
Okay,
Starting in. No.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Thank our online participants for pointing out. I will restart.
Not from the beginning, please.
Just the summary.
Okay, I was inviting,
First 2 sentences.
fine, I was inviting our last panelist for this part, for the last presentation. This is Ms. Sandra Baki, a specialist in hydrology and environmental management with over 20 years of experience in research and consultation, mainly focusing on the sustainable development of cities and communities related to urban water through implementation of decentralized and innovative water technologies and the analysis of water energy interactions.
Thank you.
Coming on, Sandra, yeah. So you and your team have developed a very interesting tool as well. So if you'd like to explain to our experts here and online what this is about. Thanks.
So my presentation is a bit more specific than the rest of the presentations we heard, because it's I'm going to present to you the methodology and tool we have developed as part of our work in task 8.1 to assist urban planners and practitioners do an initial selection of appropriate nature-based solutions in specific sites. So, yeah. Mhm.
Now. Yeah,
Okay.
perfect.
So nature-based solutions offer, as we know, multiple and at the same time very diverse benefits that can tackle many different aspects, especially in urban areas: environmental, social, economic, and of course physical health, well-being. So this is the reason why we have developed a very multidimensional indicator framework to try and capture all these different impacts from the implementation of such solutions. For these diverse and multiple benefits that we get, or their use and implementation in urban areas is increasing. And for this reason, we need structured methodologies and tools to facilitate even further their adaptation and upscaling in urban areas. And so in this context, we have developed this preliminary indicator-based selection methodology. And the main aims of this methodology is first to produce a site screening of a site of interest and produce communicable outputs and insights for each site, let's say a baseline assessment. And secondly, to carry out preliminary NBS selection and assist urban planners in doing so through the ranking based on multidimensional measurable criteria instead of using just expert judgment and a subjective interpretation of these solutions. So our methodology has two distinct steps. The first step is this indicator-based site assessment to assess the performance of a site across different sectors. And the second step is to perform a preliminary impact assessment of some candidate NBSs that have been identified in terms of their ability to mitigate the most pressing site-specific concerns that have been identified in step one. So before going into the details of these two steps and analyzing them further, I would like to show you where these two steps and methodology fits in the overall NBS assessment framework that we have developed for euPOLIS. So the first step is the site screening based on readily available data to get the problem severity in each site and identify the most critical issues. And then we move on to identifying some potential interventions that could possibly rectify these issues through an urban planning process. In the euPOLIS case, it was the GTPM. And then we move towards doing a preliminary NBS assessment of these identified NBSs, and we score them and rank these solutions in terms of their effectiveness, and we get a final first selection of NBS. And then we can move towards analyzing these identified solutions in a more detailed way, for example, through modeling or other detailed calculations, and reach a final list of NBS and design, of course. And then after doing that, we can then select appropriate evaluation indicators that my colleague Anya presented earlier. These are tailor-made to each site, and we'll be able to, with these indicators, we'll be able to assess the effectiveness of the NBS interventions that we have deployed, and of course with the monitoring systems that we put in place. So let's go into the first step of the methodology. The first step is the site screening. This is done by exploiting readily available data. We do not gather new data to do this. Whatever is there from sources from existing monitoring stations, and of course, expert knowledge if this is needed. And to the special extent that is closer to our site. And based on this data, then we calculate the contextual indicators that Anya showed, briefly introduced, so that we are able to evaluate different concerns that could possibly be mitigated through NBSs. So these concerns, the euPOLIS concerns, can be associated with 5 different categories: environment, urban development, social, economic, public health, and well-being. So here you can see the 28 different concerns that we have developed for euPOLIS in the different categories. Let me say that these concerns in our methodology need to be evaluated in all sites. So this is a persistent list, and we need to estimate, or we need to assess the performance of the site across all these different concerns, unless that a concern is, for example, not relevant for a site. For example, in radio school, business activation is not a concern, is not considered relevant, so we skip that. So to assess these concerns, we have a set of contextual indicators that we need to evaluate. But when we calculate an indicator, how do we know if this indicator shows a good performance or bad performance, or what does that mean? So we have, for this reason, to guide urban planners, we have proposed a set of thresholds for each indicator to be able to categorize, to put in different levels, let's say each concern, to high, moderate, low, no problem, and not a concern if, for example, the case of Braille school, which is not relevant. And even though this is a qualitative assessment, it is based on a quantitative measures. So based on the available data and information sources. Now, each concern could be evaluated from a single indicator. So it's a simple indicator, or it could have various sub-indicators, then making it a composite indicator. And here you can see a concern from the environmental category, the extreme heat concern. As you can see here in this table, it comprises of 3 different sub-indicators, 3 contextual indicators: the occurrence hazard of the natural phenomenon of extreme heat, the exposure to this phenomenon, and the vulnerability to this phenomenon. Exposure is expressed by population density, and vulnerability, the percentage of elderly population. So here you can see the suggested thresholds that we have used for each of these contextual indicators, along with the references we have used to base these thresholds. This is just a recommendation. In the case that we have more detailed, let's say, study analysis in a specific area, we recommend to practitioners to use the more detailed analysis. This actually, these 3 indicators are an indirect evaluation of the risk to extreme heat. And we have 2 more concerns that are calculated in a similar way, flooding and air pollution. So this is a suggested way. If more detailed data are available and analysis, of course, they can use that one. Another example of a concern is multifunctionality. It's an urban in the urban development category. This is just a simple indicator. It only has 1 contextual indicator for its estimation, and it's based on expert opinion, based on the number of functions in the site of interest. Aesthetics is a concern in the social category. It is based on expert opinion and user perception based on questionnaires, and as you can see, it's a qualitative assessment. And last one, from the physical health and well-being category, physical activity. This is also a simple indicator, and with the suggested thresholds that we have proposed. So I have used the case study of pillar parking in Gladsaxe. That this analysis was carried out by Amphi, and we assisted in the ways we could. And so Amphi and Alfred found all the relevant data and applied it to pillar parking. And so they identified the severity level of each concern Here you can see the different color coding, whether it's a moderate, low priority, high, or not a problem. And here you can see a summary of the results. You can see the distribution of concerns among the different problem categories. And here you can see the severity score per problem category and the overall site score. The higher the score, the bigger the problem. So as you can see here, the physical health and well-being shows to have a quite high score. But at this point, I would like to note that these indicators in this category were based on regional or national data, if I'm not mistaken. So they are not so site-specific. And this also indicates an issue that we have, I think, across many different sites, that we need more site-specific data, especially for physical health and well-being. On the other hand, you can see environmental issues are not so much of a problem, and the total score is around 65. And here we can have an even closer look on the severity of each individual concern. So here you can see that 5 out of 8 physical health and well-being concerns score quite high. Unemployment also is a problem, has been highlighted as a problem, and also the green space per inhabitant. All the rest of the concerns are of moderate priority or low. And just to show a comparison, this is the application in Activity Laveri in Piraeus, where we followed a very similar process. It was the first site we assessed, and we calculated the severity of, again, all of the concerns. This is just a small snapshot. It's a huge spreadsheet, of course. And the results for Activity Laveri show a quite different view. The apparent difference is that environmental issues are a much bigger problem in Piraeus. I won't go very much into detail into it, but there are issues with water quality, air quality, flooding, heat risk, many issues, and water scarcity, of course, because it's an arid area. The urban and social are more or less in a similar level as in Gladsaxe. The economic issues are a bit better in Piraeus, and this is mostly because there is a much higher level of business activity in Piraeus in comparison to Gladsaxe. Physical health and well-being is a bit better than in Gladsaxe, but again, in the case of Piraeus, we have only used national data. There were no local data or regional data available. The score in Piraeus is a bit worse than Gladsaxe. So now moving into the second step of the analysis after we have finalized the site screening. This is the impact assessment that we do of these initially identified NBS through an urban planning, identified through an urban planning process. This is this NBS list is very site specific. It's not a persistent list as in the case of concern that is common for all sites. These interventions, this list is very specific to one site. And what we do in this impact assessment, we estimate an expected impact on each concern, but using a quick method based on literature, evidence, and expert opinion. So we don't do very detailed analysis for that. And apart from thinking about what the impact of each NBS is on each concern, we try to look at the different interactions between the different concerns and categories. So, for example, if we do an intervention that impacts air quality, this has not only an effect on air quality, but also on respiratory diseases. or if we do an intervention that, for example, enhances community engagement, maybe this has an impact on mental health and depression and issues like that. So we try to look at it in a more integrated way. We have 3 different levels of impact, and this is direct impact, indirect impact, or no impact at all, and on each concern, of each NBS, each concern. So this is the interventions that Alfred showed before for Gladsax. These are 7 interventions that were identified in the way that Alfred showed, and we applied this process of the impact assessment on each of these interventions, and we ended up with the concern versus NBS impact matrix. As you can see here, it goes a bit further down. So it's a big matrix. And we did a similar process, of course, for Actidi Laveri in Piraeus. Here we had 9 different interventions. This process for Piraeus was applied a bit earlier, so it was a bit wider selection. And this is the corresponding matrix for Actidi Laveri in Piraeus. So after these 2 steps, these 2 input steps, then we proceed to calculating an efficiency score for each of the identified NBS based on 2 things: the severity of the problems on site, the concern severity score, and also the expected ability of each NBS to address a specific concern. So we have 2 scores, and then we combine these 2 scores and we get an NBS efficiency score. And the final thing is we get a rank list of these identified NBS in terms of their efficiency in tackling the most pressing issues in an area. So here you can see some results for Gladsax. There's the score per category for each NBS, but also the overall score. So here you can see the overall score of the 7 different NBSs. And let's go into more detail into this. And here you can see the ranked list of these identified NBS. If you can see that the overall score is, it doesn't have so much variation because of what I mentioned earlier, because this is an already somewhat filtered list, and it was applied later on in the process as a verification of our approach. But also, apart from the overall score, it monitors the impact on the top site priorities. Let me talk about this a little bit because this is an important thing in our methodology. So besides the screening process, we have incorporated in our methodology these top site priorities that basically are identified through the stakeholder engagement, because apart from what data say, we also need to listen to citizens and their opinion and what is important to them. So in Gladsax, 3 different top site priorities were identified by citizens. It is flooding, biodiversity, and community engagement. Actually, in the site screening process, this is of moderate severity, but for residents, these are important issues. And in our methodology, what is important is, besides picking an intervention that has a high score, high efficiency score, we want all of the top site priorities to be addressed in a direct manner by the final selection of interventions. We can see that NBS 1, the trees planted, which is the first intervention, has a higher score than all of them and addresses all 3 top site priorities in a direct way. Then the following 4 interventions, NBS 6, 2, 3, and 5, have very similar scores. and some of them address all three top site priorities, and some of them, half of them, just two. And then we have the final two interventions, NBS 4 and 7, the ball field and the sensuous garden, that score a little bit lower and address one or two top site priorities in a direct way. So let's look a little bit more into detail in these results in terms of spider diagrams that Anya showed also before. What we want is for a spider diagram to have a bigger area. The bigger area, the bigger the impact. And these spider diagrams show the effectiveness of each NBS across the 5 different categories. We can see that the first 3 interventions have like a similar pattern in terms of their effect on the different categories. Then we have these interventions 5 and 6 that also are quite similar between them. They have some economic benefit, whereas these do not. These are the vertical kitchen and the green facade. And then the least, let's say, efficient interventions are NBS 4 and 7 that occupy a somewhat smaller area in the spider diagram. And here are 3 selected interventions, and we can see in more detail their effect on each individual concern. So here you can see these are quite similar between them in terms of their effectiveness. Only here we can see an impact on business activity where we don't see in the others. And here is the ball field, which scores a little bit lower, mostly because it doesn't have so many environmental benefits. Let's say there are fewer than the rest, not that it's not important, but in terms of physical health and well-being, it also has a somewhat different benefit sphere in terms of diabetes and obesity, whereas the other ones do not. And these are the results for Piraeus, the corresponding results. And here you can see we have bigger variation in the efficiency score in the 9 NBSs examined for Piraeus, mostly for what I said before, that that was not a filtered list. It was applied in an earlier stage of the analysis. So we get variations in the different scores. And here is the rank list for Piraeus. And we can see that NBS 2 and NBS 4, the pocket park, and the planting of trees score very high. And they address 2 of the 3 top site priorities. And then we have NBS 1, which is a little bit lower than the rest, but it addresses water quality, which is also a top site priority. It's not addressed by any of the NBSs scoring higher. So some conclusions. This is a simple methodological framework, which is based on readily available data, providing a quick assessment of a specific site. It provides a quantifiable analysis, not only based on subjective criteria and best practices. Therefore, we think it's a useful decision support tool to assist urban planners and practitioners for doing an initial selection of effective NBS, so to score them and to rank them before moving on to a more detailed analysis and modeling. We have already presented our work at the EGU last week. We are currently preparing a journal preparation on our tool, and we expect that we're going to have other publications from the application, from the application of this methodology in the other euPOLIS sites. It's currently being, GladSachs we saw, but it's currently being implemented into all other front-runner cities and also in Bogota. And we have developed this methodology as an online tool, which is publicly available. You can access the tool in this link provided. You just need to register to be able to start your assessment. This is a joint effort between the NTUA and the Urban Water Management and Hydroinformatics Group, and also Resilience Guard. And we would like to thank Mixer for providing some assistance in improving the tool in terms of its graphics and communication. Please bear in mind that it's still work in progress. We are continuously improving the tool from getting feedback from users and the implementation on other cities. And please feel free, if you try, to tell us your opinion about it to improve it even further. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Sandra. I think it's time to open the floor for questions from the audience. Not sure, we have received a few beforehand. I'm not sure if there's something that anyone here from the room would like to ask. Or from, let's see, also in line, let me check in the chat. Just, if you can speak a little up, because I mean we're trying
Louder, yeah.
Okay. It's a personal perception of temperature or level of comfort. I know it's a difficult task, yeah. Perhaps it's an Italian question. Why the maximum temperature in Gladsaxe is 28 degrees and you have 75% of relative humidity? Why can we talk about issues of, let's say, heat island effect, or why do we need evapotranspiration? Do people really perceive this temperature differently?
Okay, yeah, thank you for the question. It's a good question. The reduction of temperature is not our prime subject in Gladsaxe. We are looking at how we treat rainwater. And together with the municipality, we're looking for ways to treat the water local, so we can relieve the sewer system for water. But we are aware that if we use evaporation for handling the water, there will be a lot of other values combined with that, social values, nature-based, biological, environmental, temperature, one of them. So, as you mentioned, it's not maybe if that was our prime subject, I would have chosen another place. Maybe I would have gone a little bit more south in Europe. But we of course hope that the result, because there's not a lot of results on how evaporation are working, and there's not a lot of data. So we hope we can provide data that can be used as well other places where you want to be more focused on temperature reduction.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Martin. Yes, please, Franco.
Question. When you produce this tool, did you have in mind, you said on the last slide, who is going to use it? The planners. But did you have in mind that this could become actually a commercialized product from euPOLIS project? Because this is where package 10.
Yes.
So I'm talking about.
Well, it's a free tool, and I'm not sure that it's something that it's not something that it could be very easily commercial in my point of view, but maybe the services, the consultation of using this and doing, because there is a lot of work to apply the whole methodology, and maybe urban planners or practitioners do not have the knowledge or the time or whatever to do this assessment. Maybe then the consultancy of that would be something that could be more commercial. But the tool itself, I have doubts whether it could be something that people would like to buy. It's not, so it's not EnviMed, you know, it's
We
not.
use this, no, if we use this as support to our standard consultancies, advising clients what to do, because so far in our consultancy towards urban planning, we didn't have a chance to tell them, look, these are the effects, concrete effects of what, and that maybe we can sell. I'm just thinking whether you thought about that. Why I'm saying this, because then we will have to be more precise as with regard to the effects, especially tangible ones, money-wise. So.
Yes, but maybe if it becomes
Can we improve it in that direction? That's the question.
detailed and, yeah, Kinga, please.
I have idea. So let's produce a handbook based on the tool with all the explanation how to use it and so on. And then book is something you can sell.
Product.
It's a product.
It's a product, the book maybe it's a product, yeah.
We are planning to produce something like a manual at some point.
Yes.
But it
Yeah.
specifically
It
on
could
the
be
tool.
more, it could be more.
And maybe refine even further, because this is, you know, my initial approach. Yes. But the tool itself like that, I don't think it's something that somebody would buy. It's not like a very specialized software, like a hydraulic software or a,
But
you
it's
know.
like blueprint factor methodology.
Yeah.
So this online you can use it.
Yes.
Then whatever
Yeah,
handbook you need, something
yeah.
this is the product.
yeah, maybe with examples as well and step-by-step guide and things like that,
Exactly.
yeah.
Yes, please, Irini, or yes, Professor Maximovitz, and then Irini.
Concerning Daniel's question about the relevance of the evaporation, I have no comment. I have similar concern when Morten explained to us what he wants to do in this project, but step by step we realize that there is much more than just thermal comfort. This is a country which has plenty of water, as opposed to the South Europe where there is no water, drop of rainwater in months. So the problem here is how to get benefit from multifunctional solutions, which will also reduce the problems. Here, when it rains, this area would be, I guess, flooded by rain. So this project is one of the attempts to bring this better balance of rainwater, which would otherwise cause flooding, to evaporate it. But evaporating, you get some other benefits. You maybe plant the fruits and the improve thermal comfort and other things. That is this kind of multifunctional solution. So flood reduction, food production, thermal comfort, and maybe a few other benefits from one single solution. And this is a good example to test. This is the test bed. And I think we are here. Some people may think, well, why should we do this complicated system in such a small place? It's opposite. Denmark and the other North European countries are having problems with too much water. And also, it's raining in summer, where in Italy and Spain you have no rain for months. Am I right, Martin?
Yes, you're right, and still now that we're trying to construct it and we get knowledge from that, then we as well get knowledge of how we harvest water, how we keep it on the surface, and that will be a thing for Southern Europe. How do you capture your water? How do you keep it instead of let it run off and then you will get draft a few months later, or a few weeks later. So I think there's a lot of things that we could drag out of these things that we try to do in one-to-one and get the experience from that.
I'll say something on that, and an interesting thing that we have been talking with Morten, because now we are trying to develop a U-boat model as well for the insects, is to see what are the water energy implications of such a local water management. So if you don't send it to the skewers, and if you don't you don't use so much potable water, what does that mean in terms of water energy in the whole urban water cycle? So this could be also an interesting.
But can I just add to that? Very importantly, in the comfort conditions analysis, we always use the combination of temperature and humidity. Either you use MVI coefficient or anything, PPD or whatever, you must
take that into account. The 45 degrees in Botswana and the humidity of 17% is much more comfortable than 33 degrees and 75% in Belgrade. So that combination is very, very important. And that has implication on whether people will be visiting the place, not visiting the place. So social component comes to that. So that is important to have in mind. Thank you.
Sorry, one more benefit from this is what they are doing here is if you don't capture this water and delay runoff, it may, good portion of it will run into sewer system, end up in the treatment plant. So you have spent a lot of energy, you dilute the biological process in the treatment plant, and then you spend much more money in practically unnecessarily treating rainwater. That is a problem all over Europe. Yeah. Most of the treatment plants are now suffering from this impact during heavy rain. Most of it, rain goes into treatment plant and makes a lot of complication. In addition, 50% of treated water comes from rainfall unnecessarily. This way you keep this water, it doesn't end up in the treatment plant. This additional benefit.
Thank you. Irini, we don't have that much time, so I think it might be the last question for today.
So, do you think that maybe we can integrate this methodology into the euPOLIS visualization platform in a way? So showcase dynamic diagrams and
especially the site screening results. I think is something that should be maybe, I guess, in the visualization platform, because it provides insights for each city.
Maybe you can promote it.
Yes.
Great. Let's keep that though for a different discussion, not for today. And please go ahead. You had a question, right?
Yeah, it was we made our pond. When we made our pond, we were inspired a bit by the designers in communist Poland in Russia about keeping the clean water in the parks and beauty in Rome. But maybe in Greece, they have some history with water. What do you know from your experience in Athens? How to make ponds? How learn from?
Well, we don't have much experience in urban ponds. I think they dry out very quickly. Well, we have big reservoirs in Greece to store water, so we can get by during dry periods. Unfortunately, there's not much experience especially in natural ponds. I think we only have these fountains, which are, I think, a bit outdated. It would be great to have more natural ponds with biodiversity. I think in cities, the water element is very important for people, and do it in a more, let's say, ecological way. I think it would be something that would be of interest, but unfortunately, we don't have much implementation of such intervention.
If you had 2,000 years back, in Rome, there was ponds everywhere in Rome.
Okay, yes.
2,000 years ago.
I guess there weren't that many, but during dry season, it's very dry in Athens. Maybe in the west of Greece that gets more water, but unfortunately we have like 50% of the population of Greece. They are in the most arid area. So we transport water from 200 kilometers away to be able to cover water supply in the Athens water system.
We will need to keep the rest of the discussion offline because we are at time.
Okay.
I want to thank, I want to thank our panel and the expert training that they offer to our municipal experts and the urban planners and everyone else who was interested. Of course, I want to say a big thank you to Gladsaxe Municipality for hosting us these 2 days, not only for our expert training, but of course for the plenary. That was great that we were able to finally get together. Thank you to Resilience Guard and Nancy that was on the lead for this expert training. Thank you to Mixer and Amphi, especially Alfred and Alexandra for all the support all this time. And as a final remarks, this was, as I said, is the first part. We will have a second part coming up. And for that reason, we would welcome feedback from you. We will circulate a survey in the beginning of next week for the people in the room and, of course, our participants online, and we would really appreciate if we get your comments, what you found interesting, what you might find less interesting, what would you like to hear for the next training. So thank you, everyone. Hope to see you soon in the next one. And yeah, let us know what we can do better, and keep on working for having nature around us. Thank you, everyone. Have a very good evening.